been talking about in the live shows is your comparison group is incorrect. The fact that, you know, we have the opportunity to sit down and listen to anybody on the planet, right? The best minds, the best athletes, the best thinkers, the most articulate that are alive right now, or listen to the people that have died that were around when video cameras existed. And you can compare yourself to that group.
Yeah.
But that's not your comparison group. If you have the impetus to sit down and listen to me and you waffle on for 3 hours about these deep topics, these interesting ideas, you are so already selected out of the normal group. You're already asking yourself questions that
the right questions.
almost nobody else is, right? But because your comparison group are people that are unbelievably high performing. I remember before I started my podcast, I'd listen to you or to Sam or to Joe, and I'd think, God, their recall is amazing. It's like they've just got this eidetic memory, and everything that they've ever read is able to come to the surface, and they're able to say it in this way that's completely seamless and all the rest of it. You go, okay, well, are you really person that's never recorded a podcast before going to compare yourself to Joe Rogan, man that's recorded 1,000 and spent 10,000 hours on stage and done all of this UFC commentary and done all of this stuff in terms of TV? Is that really who you're going to compare yourself to? And it's unfair. And the problem that I see is people who have big dreams for themselves and want to do great things, they like to set their sights high.
Yeah.
And yet they feel despondent in the comparison.
Yeah.
So I think
there's a pride in that too, eh? Like
I can be, I want to be.
Well, or that's who I should be comparing myself to, right? That's the pride. And the pride is something like, I should be that, or even I could be that. It's like, well, maybe you could, but you're certainly not going to do it, as you already pointed out, without the apprenticeship, right? So you could say that the despondency is actually, is in proportion to the false pride. Now, I wrote a chapter in, I think, my first book, which was compare yourself to who you are today, not to who someone else is. Sorry, I mangled that to some degree, but you get the point. The proper comparison group for you is you yesterday, because you can make. First of all, you're the only control group that's appropriate to you, because you have a certain set of talents and possibilities and limitations and tragedies that are truly unique to you, and so. You might be comparing yourself to someone else on some dimension, but it's not a reasonable comparison, because you don't know what talents they were blessed with, and you also don't know what opportunities they had that you didn't, etc. It's just not a reasonable comparison. It's a lot better to think about who you were and then to think, well, could you be somewhat better in some dimension? And the positive thing about that is the answer is almost always yes. Now, you can orient that transformation towards some stellar target, and that's a reasonable thing to do, but that doesn't exactly mean that you should compare yourself to that target. Aiming at something and comparing yourself to it are not exactly the same thing. Plus, your bloody comparison is also a delusion. You know, that's another thing that you have to understand, is that you look at the person you're jealous of, and really what you're doing is you're looking through a very narrow aperture at a very thin slice of their life. You're looking at the thin slice of their life that's turning out the best, but you're also looking at a thin slice of their life that's marketed to be the best, right? And you have no idea what the horror of that person's life might be in its totality. And you have no idea if the deal was, say you wanted to be Russell Brand. There's a good example. You want it to be Russell Brand. You want it to be as charismatic and as famous as he is. Well, your real wish is that you get to have everything Russell Brand has, but none of his problems. Well, come on. I mean, it's no wonder that a vision like that would make you despondent, because it's naive, it's resentful, it's jealous, it's bitter, and it's unreasonable. You have to take the good with the bad. You have to take the bad with the good. And people rarely think about that when they're thinking about, the famous people they think they'd like to be.
There was a recent interview with Elon Musk where he said something, "My mind is a storm. I don't think most people would want to be me.
Right.
They may think they would want to be me, but they don't. They don't know. they don't understand. What do you think of that? Elon's someone that people probably look up to and admire and aspire to be.
One of the downsides to high-level genius is you might describe it as hypomania. So here's a simple test that people can do. So this is a test of something called verbal fluency, and verbal fluency is associated with creativity. And so here's a simple verbal fluency test. Write down as many 4-letter words as you can in 3 minutes that begin with T. Okay, that's pretty constrained, 4 letters and T. Or write down as many words as you can in 3 minutes that begin with S. That's less constrained. All right, so there's quite a powerful correlation between the sheer number of words that you produce and your lifetime creative achievement, right? Especially in the artistic and verbal domains. That's different than vocabulary. Vocabulary is how many words you understand. Fluency is how many words you can produce in a given amount of time.
Deployment of those words. Yeah.
Well, people vary to a degree that you can hardly imagine. So some people, if you get them to do the 4-letter test in 3 minutes, they'll write down like 12 words. And some will write down 150. And the ones who are writing down 150, their minds are going at a hypomanic rate. They're just thinking 5 times as fast as...
Bing, 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 bing.
Yeah, without any remission whatsoever. And when that gets completely out of control, you have manic. You have someone who's manic. And there's nothing fun about manic. That's where the word maniac comes from. And someone who's manic has 1,000 different plans, each of which are 1 sentence long, that they're hyper enthusiastic about. They'll spend every cent of their money pursuing them, and things just go immediately to hell. And so that's the outer limit of pathology on the creative front. And someone like Musk, who's clearly a genius, that's what he's contending with in his internal landscape. Now, I'm not saying that he's manic, because I see no signs of that, but someone that creative is on that edge. Or you see someone like Ben Shapiro. I mean, it's very interesting to talk to Ben because, and Russell Brand is the same way. Shapiro speaks, I think, more rapidly than anyone I ever met. But if you're with him, you see very clearly that he's probably thinking 5 times that fast. And that's a lot. And when I was writing Maps of Meaning, which was my first book, I had a very difficult time shutting off my mind. I was obsessed with that book. And so I was writing about 3 hours a day. And then I was thinking about the material like for 12 hours. And the thoughts came as way faster than thinking. They probably came about as fast as I can read. I can read about 1,200 words a minute if the material isn't overwhelmingly dense. And so it was just nonstop thought for like 16 hours a day. That's part of the reason I started lifting weights, because if I was lifting heavy enough weights,
can't be thinking at 1,200 words a minute while I've got 100 pounds on my back.
It was It was enough to shut it down.
Yeah.
And it was also one of the reasons that I drank, because that was another thing that would shut it off.
Yeah. Well, I think